Hello everyone! Today's video shows the process of growing radishes hydroponically from seed to harvest with a twist. I decided to start the seeds on loofah sponges rather than rockwool. Why, you might ask? I'll give you the same answer the famous mountaineer Mallory gave, because it's there. I had some of these loofah sponges hanging around, and I thought maybe I could replace the rockwool I had been using. You can buy a loofah sponge at around $10 for 6 of them. Here you can see I cut 10 pieces from half of a loofah sponge, so you can get 20 from a whole loofah, and this package came with 6 loofah sponges, so 20 times 6 is 120 loofah cubes. That comes to around 8 cents a piece. Rockwool, on the other hand, cost around $12 for 50 1.5-inch cubes and around $14 for 100 1-inch cubes. So if you buy 100 cubes, that's 14 cents a cube. At 8 to 10 cents for a loofah cube, it's a bit cheaper. There are other reasons to look for alternatives to rockwool besides cost. Rockwool can irritate some people, and the fibers are not healthy to breathe in. It's the same material as insulation, so you might want to wear a mask and eye goggles when using rockwool. Neither the rockwool nor the loofah sponges are reusable, at least not easily reusable. But the loofah sponge is biodegradable, whereas the rockwool is made out of spun stone and will not biodegrade. So here I have my loofah sponges lined up with 5 in one container and 5 in another. I'm going to plant 2 varieties of radish. One is this cherry bell variety. This should take 4 to 6 days to germinate and then 22 days to harvest. The other variety I'm planting here is called French breakfast, and it says it takes 24 days to harvest and also 4 to 6 days to germinate. To start, I cut one of the loofah sponges in half and then half again. Then I cut each of those halves into 5 pieces, so from this loofah sponge I got 10 pieces. I saturated the loofah sponge pieces in water, then laid them out neatly with 5 in each food tray, with about 1/4 inch of water at the bottom of each tray to keep the loofah sponges moist. Now I'm ready to plant the radish seeds. Let me first start with the French breakfast variety. I placed 2 seeds on each loofah cube. Maybe I should have used the other side of the cube, which has more holes in it, but I used the top side instead, and the seeds pretty much stayed put, 2 on each. Next I planted the cherry bell variety, also 2 on each loofah cube. Once that was done, I covered each container with plastic wrap to keep the moisture and humidity in until the seeds germinate. If you live in a humid environment, you probably don't need to do that, but my environment is pretty dry right now, so covering the trays up like this prevents the seeds from drying out. Here we are 5 days later, and you can see the radish seeds have started sprouting, and the loofah seems to be doing a good job as a substitute for rockwool. Here you can see 2 small radish seedlings. Remember, I planted 2 seeds per cube and both germinated. I'm going to try to cut between the 2 to separate them out and get 2 plants out of these. By the way, I planted the seeds on the outer side of the loofah sponge, and it occurred to me at this point that maybe I should have planted them on the inside. Here you can see all these nice looking cells in the loofah. I could have probably dropped a seed in each cell and used the loofah sponge that way. Maybe next time. But meanwhile, the seeds seemed happy enough to do what they needed to do, so it's all good. Now let's look at the French breakfast seeds, and they too have germinated for the most part. This one doesn't look so good. On the other hand, this one looks great and even has a root growing out underneath. Okay, it's about a week after I planted these seeds onto the loofah sponges. Here on the right are the French breakfast variety, and these on the left are the cherry bell. And they look ready to be transplanted. Since I'm growing these radishes hydroponically, I'm going to use these wide mouth mason jars with 3-inch net cups that fit perfectly into the wide mouth. I'm going to cover each of the mason jars with silver foil to keep out the light so that the algae doesn't take over. I will also fill each jar with Master Blend hydroponic solution. I already mixed up a couple of gallons, so it's ready to go. I have another video showing how I do that. I'll leave a link to that below in the description box. Here are the French breakfast seedlings. Out of the 10 seeds I planted, 9 germinated. To start, I filled each mason jar with Master Blend solution up until just the bottom of the net cup. I want to make sure that the loofah sponges keep in contact with the water until the roots are developed enough. This first seedling doesn't have much of a root, so by making sure the loofah sponge is in direct contact with the water, I will ensure that the seedling stays hydrated until its roots can do the job by themselves. As the seedling grows and takes up the hydroponic nutrients, the water level will drop down, and that's fine since the roots will grow and be able to reach down into the solution. This gap between the water and the plant is necessary in this type of a system. This is a non-circulating hydroponic system, also known as the Kratky system, after Dr. Kratky, who popularized this method. This gap between the water level and the plant allows for the plant to get the oxygen it needs by putting out what are called air roots. Without this gap, it's likely the plant will drown, so make sure that once the seedlings mature and the water level drops, to keep that gap between the water level and the plant. Once I had the first seedling settled into the bottom of the net cup, I packed it all around with hydroponic clay pebbles to help support the plant as it grows, and also to block out the light from above so it doesn't shine down into the water, which would cause an algae problem, which is the same reason I cover these jars with aluminum foil, to keep out the light. Okay, on to the next loofah cube. This one has 2 healthy looking seedlings growing and nice healthy roots coming out from the bottom. I separated them as best as I could and then took a scissor and cut between them. So now I have 2 plants since both seeds germinated. I put one at the bottom of the net cup that is sitting in a mason jar. I already filled this with Master Blend, and then I packed clay pebbles all around the seedling, and now I have 2 transplanted. I continued this process, filling the mason jars with the Master Blend hydroponic solution, placing the loofah sponges at the bottom, and then packing it all around with clay pebbles. Since both seeds germinated on almost all of the loofah sponge pieces, I needed to separate them, which was pretty easy to do since at this stage the 2 root systems are easy to distinguish. At a later stage, the roots can get intertwined with each other, and it would be more difficult, if not impossible, to separate cleanly. It's 2 days later, and here are the transplanted radishes happily sunning under a Mars Hydro LED light. Now it's 4 days after I transplanted the radishes, and for the most part they're all growing very nicely. You can see some algae growing on one of the loofah sponges. I need to put some more clay pebbles there to keep out the light a little better, but otherwise it's all good. And here we are on day 20. It's 20 days since I first put these seeds on loofah sponges, and we've got radishes. Not all are the same size or even the same shape, but some look ready for harvest. Here you can see the roots have grown, just as the plant has, and they are nice and white looking. Although even if they had a little algae growing on it, I don't think it's harmful to the plant, just not so nice to look at. This one is the French breakfast variety, and it looks ready to eat. And this one is the Cherry Belle, and it also looks ready to eat. Maybe a little overdue. Alright, let's get these radishes out of their jars. Time to harvest. The color on these is a dark red color, but after I washed them, they brightened up quite a bit. Okay, here is the French breakfast radish, and you can see a tiny bit of the loofah still attached to the root, but most of the loofah has disintegrated, so there was really no way to reuse it. But the radish, it's a very nice looking radish, and after washing it, it looks really beautiful. I sliced off the bottom, and then the top, and then cut myself a slice and oh wow, that is good. Here you can see the 2 varieties side by side, the French breakfast on the right and the Cherry Belle on the left. Both delicious, and both ended up in my salad bowl where they belong. So there you have it, hydroponic radishes grown on loofah sponges from start to finish. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe. I really appreciate it, and thank you for watching. Bye.